Hi friends, welcome back. So headline, Apple no longer in talks to join OpenAI investment round. And I'm starting with this story because it's really encapsulates how our markets are all connected, what's driving our markets. And I want to share my thoughts and also want to get yours as well. So basically, I think it was Apple, Microsoft, I think NVIDIA is involved with this stuff. A lot of companies were jumping in and say, hey, I want to be in bed with OpenAI. That's the hottest ticket in town. I'm sure you guys know ChatGPT. It's been all over our headlines the last year or so. And essentially all the gains in the stock market also been tied to AI. Apple recently announced their new phone. They said, hey, we're going to call this thing Apple Intelligence. And essentially it's going to be powered, or was at least I thought, by OpenAI technology. And Apple, was investing in said company. Now it's saying it's not interested in maybe investing more. I thought that's kind of interesting. Mum's the word, of course. So this is the kind of reporting you get where maybe a couple insiders saying, looks like we're kind of pulling away. And I'm covering this stuff because I want you to think about, okay, is there something wrong with this whole AI narrative? Is there something wrong over at OpenAI? We just talked about this just yesterday, right? Their chief technology officer is Mira Murati. She's leaving. You could look at it one of two ways. You could say she quit. Another way you could look at it, maybe she was forced out. I mean, who knows? Mum's the word. She said in her letter, and we looked at that together in a prior video, and you can find my video on that. But she said she wants to explore. The quote is own exploration. It was kind of a vague quote, so you're not really sure what's going on. And this is also just came out. She's not the only one leaving OpenAI. I have it right here. So it says OpenAI's chief research officer, Bob McGrew, and vice president of research, Barrett Zoff, also said they're going to leave. So that didn't make the headlines, but, obviously this stuff matters. And these are research people, your technology person. So what's left? Is that the connection to Apple? Or maybe are these people all moving over to Apple for all we know? Who knows, right? I honestly, I don't know. And the thing is with this stuff, usually when you sign contracts with companies these days, you sign a non-compete clause. So I don't think, they could just go and work for Apple. Theoretically, they could go start their own thing or something like that, because some of them already have. So, we'll see. We also have this, Elon Musk, right? So he's telling everyone, AI is the future. Robots are the future of the company, being Tesla, going to add a bunch of 25 trillion in market cap. And this is the kind of narratives that are popular on YouTube. Essentially, all the young kids want to get in early on the ground floor or something and ride the wave up, which makes sense, right? And the question I always pose to you guys, and so I'm a little bit more of the skeptical of thing about this whole AI craze. I lived through the dot-com bubble, so actually. The internet, bubble, essentially, they were correct on the technology. It wasn't like, we were going to not use the internet. In fact, it turned out we're all using the internet. Companies like Amazon, ended up being really big. And these days, basically do all this stuff online. The idea, though, is AI going to be equivalent, say, to the internet craze, the dot-com, you could call it transformation of our economy, these kind of things. And are we going to go to, say, robots? This is where I feel and sort of, we'll pull up Elon Musk here. I feel like a lot of young kids out there, they want to be a part of sort of that generational change, right? And so, like I said, I lived through these things, so I kind of know what it feels like. And so people are like, oh, well, this is our generational thing. It's going to be AI. The thing is, where I question this stuff, because I lived through this stuff before, is where there's people like, Musk, who I consider to just basically be a charlatan and lie to you and say whatever you want to your face just to rob you blind of money. And I think this AI stuff may be showing some cracks, as we're seeing with Apple pulling out and wanting to invest in OpenAI, and then you got people quitting. I pull up this particular Musk thing, and why do I say charlatan? Recently, he suspended a journalist. There was some sort of weird leak with JD Vance. That's the vice president candidate for Trump. And it's funny because all day, every day, Musk will tweet out how there was a document or something about that or whatever on the Hunter Biden stuff. And, for those of you into that stuff, I'm sure you can fill me in all the details. And for those of you in the JD Vance stuff, I'm sure you can fill me in all the details. Point being, though, it's kind of funny how, if it's your team, the other team is bad, but if it happens, something like in this situation, I need to protect someone on my team, so therefore I need to suspend journalists. So I don't want to get too far deep into the rabbit hole of the whole stuff that Musk is talking about every single day. But I am bringing it up because I want you to show how, these people who tout AI all day, every day, something like a Musk isn't necessarily 100% truthful all the time. Another simple example would be like, Musk was bragging for a long time that he would never back down from Brazil and, the big bad judge in Brazil, etc. But as it turns out, Musk is like probably gonna end up paying some sort of fine and giving some concessions. And they're also too gonna take down accounts of essentially people who are spreading misinformation in Brazil. So if you're in Brazil, you can give more details on this stuff. But I'm bringing these things up because again, they all intersect. One of the things I think is important, especially with this whole AI thing, is how we think about information, right? So I certainly think that now that the AI sort of rabbit is out of the hat, there are going to be some uses for this stuff, but to what ends? So I'll give you some examples to it where I actually think, and this is where I'm pretty optimistic about this technology. So I'll tell you when I'm we'll say skeptical. If you want to say pessimistic, that's fine. But I'll also tell you when I'm optimistic. So before, I've always said that I don't really want to wear goggles, right? But when they get to, talking about augmented reality here, AR, VR stuff, right? But when we get to actual glasses or contact lenses that are lightweight, look like regular things, I may actually be interested in this stuff possibly, and depending on how well these things work. So Meta seems to be well ahead of the game. This just came out a couple days ago. You may or may not have seen this. Basically, the glasses, they look like glasses, right? They're not that thick. Whoops, you can see my thing. There you go. They're not that thick. They look, and they did a partnership with Ray-Ban too. And I remember that their most recent partnership with Ray-Ban was like a camera and like regular Ray-Ban sunglasses. The camera quality wasn't great, but it was a start. Now the big innovation in this thing, and I think this is where Mark Zuckerberg and the team, I don't know how far along they are on this thing, because the reason why I mentioned that is they showed a demo of these glasses thing. But I don't think they can bring in the market because they're too expensive at the moment, right? So this is just a prototype. But it's this bracelet thing here. And somehow they've got this thing to work, and maybe you hold this thing also, but it sort of makes it so the goggles can be smaller, but you hold something so it can track your movements that way, which is pretty interesting, right? Because the whole issue is how can you how can you make these things smaller and also yet control the interface? Here they show an example. They're playing Pong. I still think you're going to have a resolution problem, until it gets to be say 4K or whatever equivalent. They're still not going to be great. But the reason why I was mentioning the whole AI and stuff like that. So this right here, and as I remember Google Glasses, and again, all this stuff is from Meta. But I remember when Google Glasses came out with this stuff, and they were saying, basically you could go to the grocery store and you could ID stuff, and you could, find out good prices or etc. So I actually use that function with Google all the time, where I essentially, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, you use your camera, you take a picture of a tree, a plant, an animal, whatever, and it'll tell you information on it, like it'll search by image. I think this stuff combined with AI assistant probably would be pretty useful in the future when it becomes useful. And because like right now, I have Siri on my phone, and please don't wake up Siri, but it's okay for very simple tasks, right? I can have it set timers, I can ask the weather, but at this moment, Siri is not great. And so this is where OpenAI, is trying to move on this kind of space, right? But it is sort of, I'm a bit taken aback about how quickly this stuff is. Is it worth anything when all these people are leaving the company? And now they're already rushing into trying to cash in as fast as possible, which who knows, how far they are from that. They do make money, right? So well, how about this? That's a better way to say it. They bring in revenue. They're burning money. So I want to say it clearly. They bring in revenue. So they're not profitable, but they bring in money. They have revenue. They were saying here, and this was coming from the New York Times, talking about how popular is this stuff. They're saying they have 10 million Chat GPT users. These people pay about $20 a month, I guess. So they are bringing in some revenue, right? The other issue though is too, and this is kind of different estimates that have been seen here. So I guess it's 5 billion loss this year, but they bring in 3.7 billion in revenue according to this numbers here. And so it is a real business. But the reason why I start with that first story is, why is Apple pulling out, right? Because I consider Apple to be, fairly astute in this kind of stuff. Remember too, they also pulled Apple here. They also pulled out of investing in the electric car. So in my humble opinion, like when I and sort of like when I look around the market and try to see, what's hot, what's not, and share these things with you, I think Apple is a good indicator what they're up to, or something like a Warren Buffett's an indicator what he's up to. So for example, we know Apple now is cutting back on their spending R&D, that kind of stuff, or you could call it investment, whatever you want to say. Warren Buffett, we know, is selling stocks, right? So this is sort of how I kind of, how can I say, color how I view the market. And the other thing too, which actually interesting, because people, we always talk about stocks on this channel and stuff like that. You're always, kind of curious what's up is up. The tough thing about talking about stocks in the U.S. market these days is like the valuations are so high. I mean, you can even see this headline here: Costco keeps analysts busy working out the valuation question, right? So one thing that if you're new to this stuff, if I say, hey, for example, Costco, maybe the stock is too high or whatever, just for example, it doesn't mean necessarily the company's bad, because the stock can be disconnected from the company. It just means that maybe I don't want to pay that much for our ownership of said company. I'll give you an example here. So, and I'm just using Costco as an example. It's fun to use different examples. I know we use Tesla all the time, but and Tesla's grossly overvalued. Costco, you could just say is maybe a bit overvalued. It just depends how you want to look at it. So they have a PE of like in the 50s, which for Costco, it actually sounds very high. And this is a tricky one. So the basic gist of it, you look at the PEG. So that is the price of the stock compared to the earnings growth, right? And essentially your PE is the price of stock compared to how much a company earns. So you're just trying to value, okay, how much am I paying for how much earnings you get, right? Am I paying a good multiple or not? Generally, you want your PEG close to 1. And if you got pegs around, maybe forward peg of 5, maybe forward peg of 2, then you're like, okay, maybe this thing is either 2 times overvalued or 5 times overvalued, like in that range, because you want to be around 1. And it doesn't make it sound great, yet the stock keeps going up. It's because it's like, well, since everything is overvalued these days in the U.S. market, I guess we're all going to keep buying. And that's why it's so hard to talk about U.S. stocks, because and this is just on sort of, metrics that you can compare over time. This is the Shiller PE ratio. We're trading at a 36, which is very high historically, right? This could be due to any number of factors, just being lots and lots of money printing. Could be more foreign money coming into the U.S. markets. It could also be too, just the way our model system works these days. I'm sure you guys know how it is like everyone's throwing their retirement into the market. And I feel like this is sort of a part of our system these days. And I've showed you guys charts on this stuff before, but I can tell you the basic gist of it. If you're invested in the market and you have cash there, or we'll just say assets there, you're watching your wealth grow, right? And you feel like everything is okay. If you're at the bottom of the economic scale in the USA, you're really struggling. And so you actually, because of the way our system is, and this is sort of why you need to invest, if you're not invested, you're falling farther and farther behind. Basically, the gap between the rich and poor keeps going farther and farther away from each other. And, this is sort of on top of massive amounts of money printing and people who are involved sort of in the assets and can borrow money easily, can take more advantage of this stuff, especially when interest rates are low. You have more access to capital to, leverage yourself and yet take more advantage of the opportunities. And I know we're getting kind of more philosophical stuff, but I want you to understand sort of like why you can't ignore these kind of things, because it's becoming increasingly more important in order to keep up with inflation and keep up with prices in your neck of the woods. So let me give you an example. If you say, for example, you're not invested. So these are the dock workers. So this would be like Longshoremen and such. And they're threatening to go on strike. I believe it's Tuesday. It's multiple locations. And so this would be like from Texas, and I think it's like to New York or something like that. So it's going to be mostly the eastern side. I guess the western side, then I think they have 2 different unions or something like that. They're fighting over a couple different things. One is basically they're like, yo, the people in the West get paid a heck of a lot more than us. We should at least get paid close to them. And I think it's like, they want like a 30% increase. I think it's like $5 an hour per year for the next 6 years or something like that. The current deal right now is like $1 an hour, per year, which isn't very much considering how much inflation has gone up. Now, however, these workers actually do get paid fairly well, I'll state though, if you're sort of like full-time or part of the main staff, and for those of you who are longshoremen, you can probably comment on this stuff, but that's sort of my understanding. It seems like there's a lot of part-time and sort of like people on call, and then they have a sort of like your regular timer people. And I've heard that the other companies have this sort of structure as well. So like a UPS, FedEx, DHL, those kind of companies. And so these kind of jobs, you see these unionized, jobs at these industries that are essential, since they're not going to go away. They want more pay, of course, which makes sense. And the other one was interesting is they don't want automation, because essentially every time there's some sort of new robot or whatever, people really worry for their jobs, which is completely understandable. And so this is when I go back to, and this is sort of why I'm trying to tie it all together with you guys. When you talk about something like a Mr. Musk who's like saying, oh, you guys, I'm developing this awesome robot, and the robot's going to make everyone lots of money. That's coming from a particular point of view, the point of view of a rich person who thinks working hard is picking up the phone and telling someone else to work, basically, or the idea of him working hard is paying someone else to do all the ideas and stuff like that, and he just comes in and just yells at people or whatever. But he has a different point of view of stuff, right? So in his mind, he saw robots in the movie, and therefore it'll make everyone a bunch of money. But what I always tell you guys, this is part of investing, really, is to discern what is truth, what is not, what is BS, what is not. And when I see, like, say, workers are worried about their jobs, not wanting to get replaced by AI/robots, they want to get more pay. I can understand from the boss's point of view. Well, okay, fine, I'll just fire y'all and just get a bunch of robots, right? And I remember even Musk, and if you guys know, Musk and Trump were actually talking about that on their podcast. And essentially, like, Trump is like, oh, I really like you, Mr. Musk, because you're good at firing people. And then because of these comments, they actually got sued by the UWA, so it's United Autos Workers. I know I'm getting a lot of information at the same time, but I just want you guys to understand how to put all of these pieces together. And so you have this disconnect, right? You have this sort of like, your tech bro kind of people saying, AI is going to make us all, more productive, et cetera. But they're coming from that point of view of, say, the white collar office worker who has no exposure to, say, the longshoremen. These, like, all of these people make our sort of system work together. And as I said several times on this channel, like, if you want a sustainable society, you have to figure out, okay, yes, I understand these like, so say Sam Altmans and the Musks of the world want to go out to their fancy restaurants, etc. But like, those fancy restaurants or whatever places you go to, they need to have workers that cook your food and mop the floors and do these things and service you, essentially, right? But because these kind of people didn't grow up in the in that world of thinking of ever being that person, they always thought, oh well, they just don't think about it. It's if you've ever been around a person like a Musk, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's the person who, like, looks at the waiters at the restaurant and thinks that they're invisible, or thinks that the waiter at the restaurant deserves to be there because that's the only that their skill level. But if you're Musk, you grew up during apartheid, and so you have that kind of way of thinking, where it's a complicated issues. But I'm tying this all together because this is sort of why certain people think that technology is always the savior of things. When I think of stuff that is going to be successful in terms of business and stuff like that, are things that everyone is going to use, not necessarily just some things that only some people will use, and figure out ways to make everyone else's life more miserable. I know it's complicated topics, but I try to bring these things sort of like into perspective, just give you kind of general points of view on this stuff. So I'll give you another example. We went to go see the EV3. This was a Hyundai. And this is actually a HUD in the car, okay? And so I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I kept talking about the HUD, and we did a review on that, and you can find my video on that. It's the Kia EV3, and I mentioned that is because, like, again, I actually really like technology, but only if it serves a purpose to where, like, it makes our lives better, not necessarily just, what the word to say, hurts the lives of others. How can I say, or is a fantasy that will never work. I mean, that's what I'm using a Musk example, something like that, where, I'll try to make it really clear. Basically, is as an investor, you want to identify which industries, which technologies you actually think are real and are going to be beneficial to society as a whole. Therefore, we will adapt it. I'll make it more clear like that, opposed to things that aren't necessarily going to be beneficial to society as a whole and maybe only benefit a few. Because if you go that route, then you're going to essentially, alienate and leave out a lot of people, which creates a lot of societal problems. Okay. And so these are the kind of things that you think about as an investor. I know it's very, very long-winded, but I try to explain my points of view on this stuff. The last thing I want to mention too is the China situation. So the problem is like, if you see, okay, the American stocks are overvalued, then, well, where else could I go? Should I, invest in China, stuff like that? And they had like a fantastic week this past week because China's announcing stimulus. The problem though is if you go outside the USA, you run into the issues of it's just a lot more risky in other ways, be it, their accounting isn't transparent. You have no idea when the government could crack down at any moment, etc. And there's risk with that, right? It doesn't mean you can't make money. Just there's risk, and you have to understand the risk. So I just try to explain these things to you. But one of the things that's really fascinating, like for example, in the case of the Musk situation, he's actually prefers those kind of countries where the governments don't have free speech, where you can just abuse the environment, the animals, and the people whenever you want, and pay no repercussions. And in fact, this just came out today, where Musk's company like SpaceX is looking to invest in Vietnam. We actually go to Vietnam. I used to live there also too, and also I'm Vietnamese. If you don't know that, it's a long story. You can find details in my book. But the thing I wanted to say though is that for someone like a Musk, that's probably a good place for him to go invest, because basically you can do whatever you want, and you can write your own regulations if you have enough money, and that becomes a different issue, and to the morality of what Musk does to his people, his companies, etc. So I know we talked a lot about a lot of things, but I just wanted to try to let you guys know my thoughts on this stuff. And really, it all stems from why is Apple pulling out money of OpenAI? So I think there are different perspectives on this. I think Meta is doing something that looks like it appears to be pretty useful, and it seems like they have real technology. Musk, appears to try to keep doing his magic show, and Apple, they seem to trying to figure out which direction they want to go. And I don't know. I really don't know what they're doing. I think their new phone's going to come out. It's not going to sell that well as they want it to be, and so they got to come up with something new. And evidently, it's not going to be with OpenAI as much as they has previously thought. So they're pulling their money out, or not pulling them out, but just not going to put as much money in. So anyway, that's it. I want to hear your thoughts on any of these things. I do appreciate your time all the time, and catch you all in the next video.